All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and we get a lot of interesting news right now, man. Apparently, Joe Gibbs is rumored to be a part of the Josh Harris, Mitchell Rails, and Magic Johnson bid. And now what's not rumors is that there's 18 people involved, including Josh Harris, who has 30%. And we're going to talk about the percentage that Mitchell Rails is contributing, the percentage that Magic Johnson is contributing, and some of the other names that are a part of this 18 people bid. This is crazy. Also, the NFL reportedly finds no major issues in the Josh Harris $6.05 billion bid. Only some minor issues. We're going to talk about what those are, but nothing that would get in the way of this going through past the NFL to the NFL owners for them to vote on in May for this sale to be officially over with and completed. From Snyder to the 18 people. Also, there's a report that Dan Snyder may be buying time to wait for a potential higher offer. We'll see. And then, of course, man, what's going on with y'all boy Brian Davis? If you haven't heard yet what happened this morning on the Junkies radio, we're going to talk about that for a little bit. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. And then also, there's a report that the NFL is lobbying for Jeff Bezos to quietly buy an NFL franchise, but he's more than likely eyeing the Seahawks instead of the Commanders. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure you pull up every Sunday for the Commanders Call-In live show. This upcoming one, of course, is going to be very draft centered. We're going to talk about underrated prospects. We're going to do some predictions for who the Commanders may draft. We'll do some mock drafts together on the screen. And of course, I'm going to have the phone lines open for y'all to call in and give your opinions on everything that should and will happen in the draft next Thursday. But without further ado, let's get it. All right, so we also have some financial details for how this Josh Harris purchase of the Commanders from Dan Snyder may go down. According to Forbes, it's going to be $5.8 billion down immediately, and then another $250 million will be paid over the next 2 years, which is really interesting. Usually down payments are smaller than the following payments afterwards, but the complete opposite. NFL's weird anyway, so I'm not necessarily surprised. And remember, the author of this Forbes article and Forbes itself were the ones to originally break the news of Snyder exploring this sale in early November, and also the publication that Snyder's people clearly lied to in late December, saying they had offers well north of $7 billion. So you got to take it with a grain of salt whenever you're reading really any reports from anybody, but also Forbes, because they're getting things from a direct source, but Snyder probably lied to them to put some information out there to potentially drive up the bid, which didn't happen. The Commanders look like they're going to end up getting sold for $6.05 billion less than what he expected anyway, even after those shenanigans. But most importantly, moving on, Forbes says that Josh Harris has 17 partners with him in this Commanders deal to buy the team from Snyder. And Josh Harris's stake is 30% of it. He's the majority owner. He has the highest percentage, but it's not like he owns the majority of the team. He owns more of the team than anybody else, but it's really hard to classify him as a majority owner. He's not like Dan Snyder, who for the majority of the time had the majority stake and then eventually took over 100% of it. Josh Harris only has 30% himself. Again, he has the highest percentage, but you can't necessarily classify him as a majority owner. And it's pretty interesting too, because this means that there's no like dictator or monarch in the situation, like a Dan Snyder situation. Even though he owns the highest percentage, again, with him only owning 30 and then having a group of 17 who own the other 70%, it means that he will have to run things through several people. He can't just make a decision on his own and then that's just the end all be all. Maybe he has the final say, but this is very much so a group effort in everything that they do, as far as stadium ideas, stadium plans, hiring a GM, head coach, things like that, firing a GM or head coach. In our case right now, Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew, if they want to go that path. I say at the very least, give them this year to see where we go with it. But this is really interesting. It's pretty much like a republic almost. And going to the Forbes article, they said the proposal in front of the NFL by a group led by Josh Harris to buy the Washington Commanders calls for $5.8 billion to immediately be paid to Dan Snyder when the deal closes, and $250 million to be paid to Snyder over 2 years, according to a person with first-hand knowledge of the deal. The $6.05 billion purchase would get reduced to about $6 billion, discounting the $250 million over 2 years. Another NFL team that were brought over time include Jimmy Haslam's purchase of the Cleveland Browns in 2012. So this is not the first time that this has happened. Even though, over time, $250 million compared to $6 billion, the majority of it is being paid up front, so it is technically being paid for over time. But when you say that, people are probably going to assume it's the exact opposite of how it's going down. Under the proposal, which is non-binding at the moment, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, Harris would own 30% of the NFL team and be the managing partner. There would be 17 limited partners, the biggest of which is Mitchell Rails. Of course, I thought he would own the second most, but he's only owning 12%. I thought that would be higher. And then NBA legend Magic Johnson will be in for 4%, and that's a little bit higher than I expected. So I'm happy about that. Assuming Harris's group uses the league's maximum allowable debt to buy the team, $1.1 billion, Harris would have to put up nearly $1.5 billion in equity himself. And then it's been reported that one of those 17 other people other than Josh Harris is Mark Ine, owner of the DC Pro Tennis team. Now, there isn't an exact report of what percentage he'll own of the team, but apparently he's one of the 18, including Josh Harris. And then in really interesting news, shouts out to JP Finley for talking to Mike Ozanian. Mike said Joe Gibbs might be a limited partner in this Josh Harris group. Not verified yet, but quote, others have told me that Joe Gibbs is a limited partner too, unquote. And I agree with JP Finley. That is a slam dunk inclusion right there, man. To have Joe Gibbs a part of it, we already like the Josh Harris, Mitchell Rails, Magic Johnson group the most. And it would be really interesting if KD is a part of it as well, because he's been trying to get involved since we heard that Jeff Bezos and Jay-Z were teaming up. But if Joe Gibbs is involved, that's huge, man. I would be very happy to hear that. For Joe Gibbs to have that much influence over what the Commanders do in the future, I think that's a great idea. Now, of course, JP Finley posed the question to Mike Ozanian about having 17 other partners, not including Josh Harris and 17 other people. Is that not room for concern? Should we be concerned with the situation? And Mike basically said that he would not. The NFL is not going to let a deal go through unless they're sure that the capitalization of this purchase is good. So basically, if the team gets sold, if it gets approved by the NFL, and it sounds like it more than likely will, then that means that they've done their homework and that these 18 people involved, again, including Josh Harris, are legit. This is a legitimate offer. This is a legitimate sale and purchase of the team. We have nothing to worry about after the team gets sold with numbers getting a little funky. And then later on last night, it was reported by the WashingtonPost.com that the NFL's informal review of Josh Harris's tentative $6.05 billion deal for the Commanders has found only minor issues for Harris's group to address. Nothing major that would threaten the approval of the purchase. That's huge. That's big news there as well. So as of right now, with the way that it looks, the Josh Harris group should be able to purchase the team. The NFL is it looks good on our end, other than some minor things that you may want to fix on your end. For us, it looks straight, and we're going to pass it over to the NFL owners meeting in May for them to vote on it. Again, for it to be passed, for it to be agreed upon, for the team to officially be sold, 75% of the owners or more will have to say yes to it, and that's more than likely going to happen. I don't see why anybody would vote no. I think it's going to be a unanimous 100%, but we'll see. You never know. But either way, it looks like the NFL is it's out of our hands now. It looks good to us. It's up to the NFL owners to vote on it, and again, we could just assume that it will go through. So basically assume at some point in May, when this NFL owners meeting happens, the team will officially be handed over from Dan Snyder to Josh Harris, and I'm really excited about that. But let's talk about these minor issues. Let's not just gloss over that like it's nothing. The NFL's informal review of Josh Harris's $6.05 billion deal to purchase the Commanders found only minor issues that Harris's group must resolve, leaving the league and team owners confident that the deal will be approved if other obstacles related to the sale can be overcome. A person with direct knowledge of the NFL's inner workings said on Tuesday. According to that person, there are small holes in Harris's unsigned non-exclusive deal with Commanders owner Daniel Snyder that Harris and his investment group can address relatively easily. The terms of that agreement were submitted to the NFL for a preliminary review that is not part of the league's formal sale ratification process yet, which requires the approval of at least 24 of the 32 NFL owners. So I believe it's this informal review. The NFL looked over it. They're waiting for the owners to vote over it, and then after that, they'll look over, do like a last look. Okay, this is standard. This is part of the process. And look at this again just in case. But it looks like we should be good to go. Harris's purchase of the Commanders almost certainly will be ratified. The person said, if the deal is properly modified and the issues related to indemnification in the NFL's second investigation of Snyder and the team can be resolved to the other owner's satisfaction. The person said, quote, the league is doing their work. That's normal. There's small business holes in Harris's deal. They'll get that part done. It won't be a problem. The issue is those other things, unquote. So again, there are minor issues that Josh Harris and his guys, his 17 other people, need to resolve. But first of all, like they said, number one, is nothing that will get in the way of the deal. And then number two, they feel like it's just so easy to resolve. Nobody's going to worry about it. Josh Harris and his guys will fix that before we even get to this league's owners meeting where they're going to vote on whether or not the Commander should be sold from Dan Snyder to Josh Harris anyway. So nothing to worry about as fans, but I did want to note that I wanted y'all to be aware of that. The fact that it didn't go perfectly smooth, which of course we didn't necessarily expect anyway. There were going to be some random language issues, maybe a couple of numbers here and there, whatever. They're saying that Josh Harris can fix that easily before we get to this owners meeting to be voted on. Don't worry about it as a fan base. JP Finley also speaking to Mike about the Commander sale, and like I talked about earlier, like I foreshadowed earlier, he said, quote, my feeling is that it's non-binding so far, probably because Dan Snyder is sitting there saying it's possible to get a higher offer. There are a lot of moving parts here still, but at this point, this is the best offer, unquote. So basically, Dan Snyder is sitting back like, okay, I'll accept this off paper. I won't put pen to paper yet. Off the record, I like this deal, but I'm gonna stall a little bit to see if I can get a little bit more from somebody else, from Brian Davis and his pyramid scheme, whatever he got going on, or maybe Steve A from Canada steps up. Maybe somebody else comes out of nowhere, but as of right now, I like this Josh Harris offer and the 18 people involved in that. But basically, Dan Snyder is stalling to see if he can get a little bit more from somebody else. Because again, even the NFL owners, they're behind the scenes right now doing everything that they can to get Jeff Bezos to bid. And it sounds like Jeff Bezos doesn't want to bid on the Commander. He's probably waiting for the Seahawks to go up for sale right now. But the NFL owners are disappointed in how low the Commanders are going to eventually end up getting sold to Josh Harris's group for. For $6.05 billion, they were expecting it to be way closer to $7 billion, which is what Brian Davis and his Illuminati group is trying to offer. But I mean, that's just so illegitimate. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and get to it right now. Again, Brian Davis, it's been reported that his $7 billion offer is real. The problem is, where is it exactly coming from? And if you heard that interview this morning on the Junkies radio, man, with him saying, I got white people money, like my money comes from white people, and like it was just so many quotables of nothing. It just sounded like a crypto type of guy that pulls up in your DMs and says, I can turn you $100 into $1,000. Like it was just all of that type of energy in there. It was crazy. And then even Sean Merriman came out and tweeted last night, BS, Brian Davis doesn't have the funds. Tried to get me for $3 million, took him to court and won $4 million. He owes a bunch of athletes money. The other owners will never approve of him trying to buy the team. And like I said, I already reported this a lot of videos ago about his checkered past and how he's being sued by a lot of different people, including Dennis Rodman. One time he tried to buy a franchise, a sporting franchise, I believe it was the NBA, and then when it was time to pay up, he didn't have it, so everything fell through. He got sued for that as well. Him and his partner Christian Laettner are going through it right now. I mean, I don't know what they're trying to do, but they got to chill out, and I don't want anything to deal with them. It was reported yesterday that the money was coming from the Middle East. Like, what does that even mean? That's a large area. That's so general. That's just like saying Josh Harris's money is coming from North America. Who is North America? Who is that? Can we be specific? What does this mean? And with the money coming from the Middle East, is this just blood oil money or something? If Brian Davis were to be sold the team and for some crazy reason the NFL owners would approve of it, would they move the Commanders to somewhere in the Middle East? Like, what is really going on? It sounds like a pyramid scheme. Sounds like the guy that's really trying his hardest to get you to buy some cryptocurrency through him and things like that. It sounds terrible. And then he even had the nerve on WUSA 9 being interviewed by Darren M. Haynes to say, I've made business mistakes. Boy, you you undersold it. You have made more than just some business mistakes and that's it on the surface. He's done some really terrible things to a lot of people, man. I mean, it's very Bernie Madoff sounding when you really dive into his history. It's really crazy. Nowhere near as profitable, but it's really scary. I want nothing to do with Brian Davis. Everything I've heard from the past couple of days, I'm done. And then that interview this morning was a cherry on top. If you haven't heard it, please go listen to it. I couldn't even finish it because I was like, all right, man, this man is babbling. He ain't talking about not nothing. He ain't talking about nothing for 1,000. I'm out. So I don't want nothing to deal with him, but y'all can go watch that interview if you want to in its entirety. That's up to y'all. And then also, again, like I already reported earlier, the NFL is lobbying for Jeff Bezos to quietly buy an NFL franchise, whether it's the Commanders or the Seahawks. They may already be giving up on the Commanders because they can already tell Jeff Bezos wants nothing to do with it, but they want Jeff Bezos to be an NFL owner. He would only increase the value of the entire NFL as a whole. He already owns Thursday Night Football, so don't be surprised if Jeff Bezos ends up buying the Seahawks. We were hearing that he may be more interested in the Seahawks over the Commanders months ago. Even while the Jeff Bezos reported interest in the Commanders was at his highest, there was an article, a report that came out that he's actually probably looking at the Seahawks more than the Commanders. And now, as we can see further into the process, that he's pretty much out of the running as far as the Commanders go, it sounds more realistic that he will end up buying the Seahawks. So don't be surprised, just giving y'all a heads up there. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like in this video if you liked it. If you learned anything, let me know how you feel about this whole breakdown of the percentages. Is Josh Harris's percentage lower than you thought? Mitchell Rails' percentage lower than you thought? Let me know how you feel about the fact that there's 18 people involved in this deal, including Josh Harris. Do you feel like that's too many, or do you feel like that's just fine? Going from a monarch dictatorship to more of like a republic type of thing. How do you feel about that? And also, how do you feel about the whole Brian Davis situation? Of course, how do you feel about the Jeff Bezos situation? All of that. And of course, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.